We're back to as if by clockwork. With the release of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, we are once again seeing the arguments about accessibility and difficulty when it comes to game design. You have one half of people saying that hard games are bad and there should always be an easy mode. You have the other half saying, no, you just need to get good, these games are great. And for today's video, we're going to talk about why both sides are completely wrong and how everybody is missing the key part when it comes to talking about making games better or more approachable for everybody. Sekiro has once again joined the ranks of Cuphead, Dark Souls, and any other hard game released in the last 10 years when it comes to this argument about difficulty. As we've said, many people view difficulty as bad design, and that games should be more accessible for everybody. But, with that said, the argument again goes back to not every game should be accessible to everyone, especially if you're aiming for a specific niche, and that is certainly true. But the problem with this discussion from everybody is that the term accessibility is not the correct one to use, and it's causing a lot of confusion, and just messing up this discussion when it gets brought in. When we talk about accessibility, we are referring to quality of life or specific elements designed to make a game more accessible by people who may suffer from disabilities, ranging from but not limited to color blindness, deaf, having motor skill issues with their hands, being disabled, and many more like that. The IGDA has a SIG that basically collects and talks about raising awareness for helping making games to be more accessible along those lines. And that is good. Case closed. You should not be arguing about games being more accessible. However, though, what we're talking about when it comes to difficulty and getting people to enjoy games, that is another conversation. Some people have used the term approachability. I use playability. And again, we don't have an agreed upon term. We could even use retention or burnout rate when it comes to video games, with keeping people invested. And that is a different story. To put it another way, accessibility to like a building would be making sure that people can get into the building in the first place. Handicap ramps, escalators, things like that. But that does not have anything to do with the products themselves or experiencing the service within that building. And that's what playability, or what I'm going to use playability to describe for this video. So, when we talk about making a game playable, what I mean is that the game should be both understandable as well as teach or allow the player to experience the core gameplay loop regardless of their skill level. Now that may sound like accessibility, but it's not entirely the same, because we're still allowing for hardcore challenges, incredibly, technical based games, but the game should still have or cast a wide net to allow everyone to experience it. Even if it's not at the super hardcore level, you can still experience what the game has to offer and still be allowed to make progress. When we talk about playability, Nintendo is definitely one of the best. Excuse me, my voice just went out there. Nintendo is definitely one of the best examples of playability within their games, as they create their game spaces and environments explicitly to allow multiple skill levels to play it. They don't need to have difficulty settings, they don't need to have a get good mode or anything like that. But basically, how the games are built has a wide level of skill. Even something like Breath of the Wild works along those lines. If you want to make Breath of the Wild easy, get all the Guardian Spirits, get the Master Sword, get the best recipes, go fight Ganon. You want to make it hard? Go fight Ganon right at the start, because people have done that and they have succeeded. But the point is that it's all built internally within the game space to allow for multiple people to play it. The 3D Mario games are another great example. We've talked about this before when it comes to subjective difficulty and how the levels are designed to allow multiple kinds of play to get through it. Yes, you have these hard-coded challenges throughout the level, but how you get them and how you move through the game is entirely dependent on your skill. But in the same token, Nintendo doesn't put up a big barrier that says, oh, you need to get good to beat Bowser. You just need to learn the game. But there are still post-game super challenges to test those players who want to feel like, they want to master this experience. And that's where good playability comes in. And playability itself encompasses a lot of different areas. It's part of design. It's also psychology with trying to get people motivated and convince them to keep playing. And it's also heavily built on UI. You want the player, regardless of their skill level, to be able to understand what's going on. This is why when we talk about tutorial design in 4X and grand strategy games, that they are horrible from a playability standpoint. Because they are not designed for any kind of onboarding or multiple skill levels to start understanding it. You are either an expert or knowledgeable at Paradox Interactive's games, or you're never going to learn them. You're never going to learn them without getting a lot of help and advice from somebody else. And the key point about playability is that everything is built within the game space to teach and educate the player on how to play their game. So, with that said, when it comes to good and bad playability, fans or longtime fans of mine know about how I stick on two specific points. One is I felt BioShock was overrated, and two, that difficulty modes in video games are bad design, or at least traditional difficulty settings, where you have easy that basically removes all gameplay, normal, which is maybe a little bit better, the quote-unquote real way to experience this game, and then hard mode where we just give every enemy 30 additional points of damage and health and say go nuts. It is very easy, because of how video games are designed, to go for either extreme of difficulty. If you want to make a game easier, just make every enemy do 75% less damage. You want to make everything harder? Let them do 2.5 times more damage. But making a balanced experience, one that works with either just one difficulty setting or building the difficulty within the game space, is the hallmark of a great design. One of my favorite games, The World Ends With You, has difficulty settings to it, but they are entirely switch or toggleable at a moment's notice and will reward the player differently based on how they want to play it. But at the end of the day, you can experience The World Ends With You on the easy setting, just as you can experience it on the extreme setting. And you are rewarded or allowed to do it however you see fit. Now, with that said though, we'll switch to some gameplay footage in a few minutes, but before we do that, I want to talk about 3 recent examples of games that suffer from bad playability. We have Cuphead, we have Sekiro, and we have Celeste. And I know what you're saying right now, or I know what you're thinking. You didn't mishear me. Celeste is an example of a game that has bad playability elements to it. And I know that game won Indie Game of the Year from 2018 at the Game of the Year Awards, and has been praised for its accessibility thanks to its assist mode. But like I said at the start, accessibility and playability are not the same. And let's go over the 3 games. So, with Cuphead. Cuphead has 3 difficulty settings to it. You have easy, normal, and expert. Each difficulty setting affects what patterns the bosses have access to and their overall health. When you play the game on the easy setting, enemies will not go through certain patterns, and it will be easier to get them to move to each one. When you play on expert, the bosses will throw in new patterns, and their existing patterns will be changed to be harder. Now that right there is great design. Regardless of your skill level, you can appreciate Cuphead's design at any skill. There's just one bit of a problem there. The final 2 challenges in Cuphead, the King Dice fight and the Devil, can only be played on normal and expert difficulty. There is no easy version of them, and that is bad playability. If you're going to introduce elements that allow the player to experience or allow all players to experience your game, then that has to be kept from beginning to end. And I know people will say, well, that's just how they did things in the old days. We all played retro games where it said, you beat the game, now do it again on hard. That doesn't fly anymore. And again, a great playable game has to be experienced for all skill levels. Not putting up a wall that says you cannot beat the game until you play on hard, or beat the game with only one life. You can have those challenges, but there still must be a quote-unquote end for everyone to experience. Now, Sekiro has problems when it comes to playability in terms of how it punishes new players with its systems. And I could go on a 30 to 40 minute rant about Sekiro right now, but I know some of you would like me to do that. However, we need to keep this video at least somewhat on track. But Sekiro's systems are designed to essentially punish the players who don't need to be punished. When you die, unless the unseen aid chance procs, you will lose a huge chunk of your money, which is used to buy more resources, and your experience, which allows you to unlock new skills and passives. In the Soulsborne games, when you die, you are still given a chance to recover all that. As long as you return to the last spot that you died, you get all your resources back, and it was like nothing happened. In Sekiro, however, if you get stuck at a boss fight, you can find all your resources just being drained from death after death after death. And then, of course, when you die, the Dragon Rot system comes into play, which lowers your unseen aid chance, making it even harder to get those or keep your resources preserved. Not only that, but the game's posture system punishes players for taking damage. When your total health drops below half, your posture recovery rate, or your ability to easily deflect or block damage, takes a nosedive. So the more times you get hit, the easier it becomes to take more hits or get more damage over the course of that battle. And the game really doesn't feature any kind of hardcore edge or hardcore mastery elements to it. The only exception being ringing the bell to turn on, I guess, quote-unquote hard mode. But so much of this game is designed to punish new players, and that's not good playability. So, the last example, and then we'll switch to some footage, is Celeste. Now, with Celeste, it was heavily praised for its assist mode, which if you don't know what that is, the assist mode was an on-screen menu or an in-game menu that you could turn on at any time, and it allows you to basically break the game. You could turn on infinite jumping, make your character invulnerable. You could even make it so that pits do not kill your character. You could literally make the game so that there is no threat, there is no challenge, there is nothing at all, and you can just play the game like that. And like I said, a lot of people praise this for accessibility, but the problem is that this is not good playability, because the game itself is not teaching or giving the player room to learn. Right from the get-go, Celeste expects a lot out of its platforming. It is designed to be a hardcore platformer from beginning to end. The assist mode exists, that was not easy to say, separate from the game space, or from the core gameplay loop. This is not the same as in Mario, where if you die enough times, the game will give you a little bit of a help, or allowing the levels to accommodate multiple skill levels. This is again a game similar to Sekiro that says, you must do this exact thing, or you will never win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The only difference between Celeste and Sekiro is that Celeste basically says, if you get stuck, just cheat and break the game. But that's not teaching a player, that's not making them better at the game. And I know a few of you will probably argue, but what's the point if it allows everyone to play the game, or get through it? And that is a major issue, because this is what we're going to talk about next. Whenever we have these discussions about difficulty, it's always the same thing, that hard games are bad games. However, I would like to point out that the same can also be said of easy games. So we're going to switch to some footage after a quick shout out to our Patreon backers, and we'll talk more about that next. And now for a quick thank you to our Patreon backers. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, you'll find our Discord channel linked down below. We're back to some footage of Cuphead for this final section, talking more about the problems with relying on an easy mode and not really thinking about things from a design or playability standpoint. Like I said at the end of the first part, many people will automatically assume that because a game is hard, that it has to be badly designed. But I would argue again that games that are designed only for easy play can also have that same issue, which I know sounds very weird. But this all goes back to how you're designing a game. The very best games are built around not only a balanced skill curve or playability, but being able to be enjoyed by everybody, not just a specific group of hardcore people or nothing but novices. And the problem with focusing nothing but an easy mode is that when you kind of quote unquote rely on that as a crutch, it means you're not really thinking about your game from a playability standpoint. Again, many people will look at difficulty settings as simply the easy way out. I know, no pun intended with this part here, that if I want to make the game hard, I'm just going to bump everybody's points up. If I'm going to make it easy, we can make it so that you don't even need to play the game in order to win it. And we have seen many developers go that exact route. We've seen this with many RPGs and story-focused games that will have a setting. Usually it's either like a casual mode or a story mode, and it will say you do not need to, you can just experience the story and not have to play the game, or something along those lines. And that to me is not good, because if you're just giving up on those people ever trying to learn your game, you're not going to improve things from a UI or a game design standpoint. There are many games out there, whether they are aimed at easy, normal, or expert players, that could do a better job in terms of playability. Because as we said, playability encompasses a lot, from design to UI to aesthetics, you name it. And if you just take the easy way out with having a difficulty setting, you're not thinking about what is stopping those people from enjoying your game. And this can become very hazardous if you're building this as a continuing franchise, or if you're trying to build another game in the future. If you don't know why people aren't enjoying your game or aren't playing it, you may be in for a rude awakening when you release your next title and a fraction of the people who played your first game bought it and or maybe even returning it. And again, without getting proper feedback, you will never know why. As we've said before, it is bad feedback to say that this game sucks, it's horrible, you're a stupid developer, just as it's bad to say this is the best game, I have no problems with it. Neither one of those statements is improving the quality of the experience. And again, the best games that go for playability will allow everybody to experience the core gameplay loop, even if it allows for some accommodations depending on the skill level. Again, with something like Mario, you don't need to be a pro-level player to beat a Mario game. If you want to see everything 100% beyond the ending, then yeah, you're going to need the skills for that. But Nintendo always has kind of like a skill ceiling for the normal progression through. And that is always going to be noticeably less compared to their final challenges, because they want everybody, regardless of your skill level, to at least see the end of a Mario game. After that though, there's always that little extra challenge if you want to improve yourselves, or if you are already a skilled player and you know that Nintendo is hiding that difficulty. Another great example would be the XCOM games from Firaxis. What they did was split the game into 4 different difficulty settings. You have, I think, easy, normal, the quote-unquote, I guess, real way to play, and then legendary. The difficulty settings will do minor adjustments to character and enemy stats. You'll find on the easier settings, enemies have like 1 or 2 points of less health. On the higher settings, they'll have 1 to 2 more points of more health. And to explain why that is a big deal is way beyond the scope of this piece. But the point is, when you're playing the game on the easier settings, you are experiencing XCOM the exact same way as somebody who's a pro-level player. but you're given more accommodations, or there's kind of like a safety net to protect you. Enemies aren't going to be as accurate. You're going to have a greater chance to hit. You're still going to be playing the tactical game. You're still doing the global persistent elements. But it's not as do or die in terms of what it's requiring of the player. And to me, that is great design. That you can still experience XCOM regardless of how well you are at the game. But you can play it regardless of your skill. And again, they could have just said, on easy mode, there is no global minigame or no global persistence system. Or cover is always full. Like, you don't even need to get into cover and your guy is protected. That would have made those games, or that would have made things easier, but it would basically remove the game systems. And again, by focusing on these different difficulty settings and making it playable, Firaxis made a strong game for it. So that somebody who has never played a tactical strategy game can at least kind of dip their toe into the XCOM experience without being immediately hit by old school, very difficult design. Just as somebody who has, sharpened their teeth or claws on those old school games can jump right in and miss a 95% shot against a sectoid. But to begin to wrap things up, again, good game design is about providing a balanced experience. And if you want your game to be playable, then you need to build the difficulty within the game space itself. Not just by having random sliders and adjusting stats, willy-nilly. There has to be a thought process behind this, and more important, there has to be, again, a wide berth in terms of allowing people to enjoy your game. If it's just AMD hardcore, you're not going to attract a casual market. If your game has no interesting elements to it whatsoever, then you're going to find that people aren't going to be that into playing it. And again, there's so much more to discuss about this, but we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you so much for watching. If you are new, be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And if you let me discuss anything else with this topic, please don't hesitate to get in touch. But otherwise, have a great night, and I'll see you all next time. If you're looking for a book on design, my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, is out now. It is available where most books are sold, and it comes in paper, hardcover, or digital copies. This is the perfect book for anyone interested in learning about game design, whether you are a student, enthusiast, or just a fan. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel linked down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it. And tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.